Here at Gianaris Trial Lawyers, we specialize in toxic exposure cases. I've been working on cases like this since shortly out of law school 25 plus years ago. A toxic exposure case isn't much different than any other case. We have to prove that the other side, that a company or a railroad or some what we consider a bad actor, exposed innocent person to toxic chemicals. In most lawsuits, the goal is to show that another person, another company, another entity caused an injury, and that's what we have to prove in a toxic exposure case. Toxic exposure cases are a little tougher because we're going back in time. Nobody gets sick from a toxic exposure case the next day. We specialize in going back in time and investigating and recreating work histories. So railroaders or refinery workers or guys who worked in the trades, pipefitters, Boilermakers, Electricians, Ironworkers go in and out of job sites and they're exposed on the job sites. We go back in time, we gather evidence, and we prove what they were exposed to. First, we have to prove general causation. That means a certain chemical has the capability of causing a certain type of cancer. This is done through a lot of scientific work. This is done through very specialized medical doctors who look at one group that's been highly exposed and another group that hasn't been exposed, and they look and they say, are there more cancers of a certain type in the highly exposed group than the non-exposed group? If there are more cancers in the exposed group, that's general causation. That means the chemical can cause the disease. Where we shine is going back in time, looking at a worker's history, investigating his job site, determining what he was exposed to, and then making a case that a certain chemical or chemicals that he was exposed to actually caused his disease. That is specific causation. Our cases rest on being able to prove what a worker was exposed to, and that's what we specialize in. In order to prove what a worker was exposed to, our investigators have years and years of experience. Many of them actually worked in the trades. They've worked with and interviewed for the last 20 years tradesmen, railroaders, factory workers, refinery workers. They know where to look for the exposures. The thing is, most big companies didn't keep really good records, very good records, sometimes no records at all. And in fact, sometimes they threw away the records. So we sort of have to recreate history, but that is what we do best. So if we can prove exposure and the science can prove that that exposure causes disease, we can make a case. Some people ask, well, it's been 20, 30, 40 years. That's called a latency period. No one is exposed to a cancer-causing chemical on day one and develops a cancer from it on day two or even the next week or the next month. It's always years of a lapse period. We know how to go back in time and figure out what a worker was exposed to years ago. It's a tough task, but it's what we do the best. What can I expect out of a toxic tort lawsuit? Well, you can expect that we're going to figure out, one, is the chemical you were exposed to or the chemicals you were exposed to, are they capable of causing the disease? What we're going to have to do is figure out, were the chemicals the worker was exposed to capable of causing the disease? And then we're going to have to figure out, to what extent was he exposed, and can we prove the exposure? We're really good at that, and if we can prove those things, we can make a case. Proving it doesn't mean we have to have documents, it doesn't mean we have to have photos, it doesn't mean we have to have the actual chemical. We can prove what a worker was exposed to through testimony, through interviews, through talking to coworkers, through finding documentation that otherwise is kind of hard to find, through OSHA investigations, through EPA investigations. There's a whole array of ways to figure out, to determine what a worker was exposed to. And we can do that. We've done that for 25 plus years. Often we're asked, well, what can I expect from this lawsuit? Many times a cancer doesn't occur till years after the exposure. So the worker's retired, he might be in his 60s or 70s or even older, and the worker and or his family are saying, well, I've lived a good life and I made a good living and I'm up in age. Do I have a lawsuit? Well, I say, hell yes, you have a lawsuit. A 50-year-old has a family to raise. A 50-year-old still has wages to earn. 50-year-old's work history is being cut short, but a 70 or 80-year-old has less birthdays left, but each birthday is cherished. Each birthday is more important. There's an old analogy about candles on a birthday cake, and when that birthday cake has 70 or 80 candles on it, that is a very, very special cake. And the people gathered are saying, well, it's so good that you made it to 70. The next 10 years are golden years. In these cases, a guy who's retired, who spent his whole life working to raise his family, and now at 70 years old or 75 years old gets cancer. He's in his golden years. He should be enjoying his life with his family, his grandkids, his great-grandkids, and it's being taken away. It's being harmed. So we especially cherish the fight for people who work their entire lives. Actually, were the backbone of America, made America strong. Probably were in the military, probably might have been in Vietnam or Korea or later conflicts, came home, worked their entire lives, retired, and then are struck with this horrible news of a cancer that could have been prevented if they wouldn't have been exposed. Some clients call and they say, well, you know what, my oncologist or my surgeon or my family doctor never told me that this chemical caused this cancer, so, how can we prove it? Well, treating doctors are in the business of fighting the cancer. Treating doctors are in the business of keeping people alive, saving lives. They are not concerned with what caused the cancer. They don't look backwards, they look forwards. How can they save your life? How can they make your life better? So we wouldn't expect a treating physician, an oncologist or a surgeon to dig in and figure out, hey, what was I exposed to? What was my dad exposed to, and what caused his disease? That's not their job. That's not their role. In your treatment, that is not their role. The doctors who do that are occupational disease doctors, epidemiologists, toxicologists, and we have those doctors in our cases to figure out what caused your disease. Often people ask me, well, Ted, I wasn't exposed to that much of a chemical. Do I have a case? Well, first, most chemicals exposures are silent. They don't have what we call onion properties. You don't smell them. They don't make your eyes burn. They don't make you itch. But you're exposed nonetheless. It's kind of a silent killer. Just because a worker doesn't know he was exposed or doesn't know how much he was exposed doesn't mean that an exposure to a cancer-causing chemical didn't cause his disease. It's our position, and the science backs up, that there is no safe level of exposure to a carcinogen. Defendants in these cases will pull out all these statistics and say, if you weren't exposed above this amount, this cancer-causing chemical could not have caused your cancer. And that's just not true. It's a linear progression, and every exposure adds to the risk. And if you've had the exposures that add to the risk, and then you get sick, those exposures contributed to your illness.